Good evening and welcome back. Hope you've enjoyed the international break. Stell wins the prize for furthest overseas visit, potentially. He went to Morocco. I got a day trip on the train to Skeggy, half a day. Anyone else been away on an international break? I guess really Jacob Beddoe does pretty well for travels, doesn't he? Grenada and I forget who else they played, but he's got a couple of caps. Jody Jones, was it the Netherlands? Kuyar has been out our far side of Asia, Pakistan, among others. So we've been clocking up the miles. Hot off the press tonight. Is it a return for us to see Neil Ardley in a home dugout, not our home dugout? We are away, first round proper, against either Brackley or Woking. 1-1 draw between those two teams at the weekend. Not sure if the replay is this week. I know they're trying to squeeze them in as quickly as possible, but we will be away. Will be a Saturday. Potentially. Of course, had we been at home, Forest were at home, so we wouldn't have been playing Saturday. So still a chance it can be a Saturday. I guess for on a purely selfish basis, it would be nice to do Brackley on the basis it's a new ground, and it's the only one I can do, and I know a lot of others can actually do this season because we've had a couple of seasons in League Two now. Your thoughts on the return of Richard Montigue, a slightly expanded role in succession to Roberto Gagliardi. He comes in as director of football. I'm sure he will be, as will Martin Patterson, eagerly looking ahead to January the 1st to further strengthen that squad. Notts players got a few days off over the weekend. Off to Barnet we will go on Saturday, a return to league action. And as a result of a hastily rearranged fixture, by my maths, it's 2 away games in 4 days. Saturday at Barnet, Swindon on Tuesday evening. I was going to say the county ground, although it's called something else these days. Welcome to our official partners, JH Accountants and the Trent Navigation, aka the Big Shed. Been chatting with Radi Avramovic today. Radi's done a video for us. We'll be putting that out online. He says everyone's got to be there, including his former teammates. Paul Hooks, Ian McCulloch is planning to travel down from Scotland. Trevor Christie will be there. They'll all be in the audience for that event on the Friday evening. Big Shed at the Trent Navigation. Right, if we get through tonight without computer glitches, I will be staggered. You can see it's a slightly different background. Behind me is the Atlantic, Carbis Bay, just outside St Ives. It's a very nice part of the world. Long weekend down here. It's a lovely view still. I tell you what, though, how hot was it in Morocco where you were?
Yeah, it was just mid-30s every day. So I'm imagining it's not quite that down there, no.
Mid-30s Fahrenheit, I'll tell you. For those of us an older persuasion. And of course, no one likes not to see you at games still, but we're all quite pleased when you go away because we do all right. We've got a 100% record when you're not here.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and they'll all be pleased to know I'm not going to be there Saturday as well. I've got another little follow-up trip, a 2 nights in Dublin for a birthday-related trip. So yeah, I won't be there Saturday. So hopefully the wins will continue. But I paid me £2.50, subscribed to the club's whatever you call it, Pies Player or whatever it's called nowadays, and listened by the pool. And it was interesting listening to Tomo and Adam on the radio, like listening to a game because honestly, when you can't see it, it's so much more nerve-wracking when you can't actually see it than being there. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting listening to Adam describe the wind and the conditions maybe upsetting the game and interfering it. It obviously didn't interfere with the performance. They played really well, so it sounded like. And the closest wind interfered with me, it nearly knocked the umbrella out my cocktail. So yeah, it was a little bit of a different experience listening. But if they keep winning and putting in performance and scoring goals like they did, then I'm glad to go away a little bit more often.
Yeah, but the really bad news still is you're back for Swindon, aren't you, on Tuesday?
Yeah, I am. But back to travel down to Swindon, the hastily rearranged game. I mean, it probably did me a favour because me and we didn't get back in till about 4 in the morning, Saturday morning. And had the Swindon game gone ahead, I'd have been hot footing it straight down to, well, what was the county ground, just straight down to Swindon on about 3 hours sleep. So, yeah, probably did us all a favour with that being sort of called off. So, yeah, glad it's quickly rearranged. I'll be back for that Swindon game.
Okay, so the Neil Ardley Derby, possibly FA Cup. I tell you what's interesting, Stel. Straw poll among the flock, and a lot of people, a lot of fans have been, really excited. Who are we going to get? Where can we go? I'd have loved. I'm down here at the minute. I'm toying with the idea if I get allowed out to go to Truro versus Tottenham, which is an FA Cup fourth round qualifying replay, because Truro got the new ground down here and everything. I'm not sure I'll be allowed to go. Had we drawn Truro or Tottenham, I think I could have got away with it. But among the fans, there is still the magic of the cup. I do think that. Sometimes I suppose I'm relieved we're not in the fourth round qualifying draw these days, and that we get straight through to the first round proper. Although I am of a certain vintage that I used to like coming in at the third round proper. But nevertheless, we are in the first round proper, and I do think there's a bit of magic to the competition. We just need to win a game or two in a cup competition, don't we? But I think Martin Patterson is going to be a bit more focused than some of his predecessors.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree totally. Well, you say the magic of the cup, and I think that only grows when you go another season and another season without a cup run. It's a little bit different. You see it with certain clubs and certain fan sets. If they do well in cups continually, then it does sort of lose a bit of appeal. It's a bit blasé. But when you haven't had one for years, we say this every year, don't we? Not so due a cup run, and they do absolutely everything within the power to not have one. So you're always hoping, aren't you? Always hoping. I think the one thing with a first round draw, you wanted a home draw, and we haven't got that. So that's the disappointment, obviously. And how far we'll be travelling depends on that replay result between Woking and Brackley. Brackley obviously being a bit closer to home than Woking, but there's some familiar faces, as we say, at Woking. I'm not done too much research. So given that we've had about 2 minutes before we came on air to do any research, I don't really know too much about Brackley, if I'm honest. Came up from the National League North, was it last season? But or was it the season? But either way, I don't know too much about them. So we will see. We'll wait on that result. But yes, it's a shame it's not a home tie. But again, we're looking for a cup run, aren't we? And fans will travel to either of them grounds because again, Notts County will be a big scalp for either one of them teams.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen the rest of the draw, but I'm sure that the lowest ranked teams left will be a shoo-in for a cup TV game. But I would think there's a chance. Non-league club against big league club like ourselves. I would think there's a chance that it could be a televised game. We'll obviously see in the not too distant future. Bud Chatwin, in the analogy between Morocco and Skegness, Bud says there's not much difference between Morocco and Skegness. Both have massive beaches, donkeys, and problems with people drinking alcohol. And he goes on, does Bud. I hope Richard Montigue has brought some good ideas back with him from Swansea. Evening from Ian Haywood, Colin Metcalf. Whoever we get in the FA Cup, we know it's now either Brackley or Woking. Can we please take it seriously and not hand them the game by making stupid subs for a game that's in the future? Yes, I'm still annoyed. Me and Stell disagreed on that one. I was all for hanging on with the same 11. Stell said it didn't matter what we would have done, we were going to get beat at Peterborough. I know it polarised a lot of opinion, and we did have a very big turnout, if I remember right, at Peterborough that day. And then, of course, we lost at Walsall, didn't we? So it didn't even work. What else have we got? Evening the Flock, says Royston. Barnet going to be a tough nut to crack. We need to play like squirrels. Okay. I thought we're magpies, Royston. Jonathan Hammocks. Evening, Jonathan. Really missed not having a game this weekend. However, hopefully the players will be nice and fresh for the next two massive games. 4 points would be a very welcome minimum. Royston's repeated his Squirrels and Barnet. Jonathan has done a four-parter. Hammocks Part 2. Hopefully, with Montigue coming back, we can be around the playoff picture by January and then discover a couple of strong players for the push to the end. Got to be a positive that Richard Montigue is coming back, says Ian Cooksey. This should mean a little bit of solidity in terms of signings and balance to the club. Jurgen Halligan noticed Barnet had their keeper sent off their last game. Expect him to be suspended. And Jonathan with Hammocks Part 4. I lost my mother-in-law last weekend. She became Notts fan in 2009. Casper Schmeichel was her favourite player. I will miss her and dedicate the win at Barnet to her memory. And he just adds, it takes a while for typing out a message with my voice control, so apologies for the mistakes. You're always most welcome, and I'll always ensure that we read your messages out, Jonathan. Jonathan, of course, for those who may remember, gave out that very emotive speech in the dressing room when he was asked to do so by Luke Williams a couple of years ago. Spotter's badge to Bud Chatwin. He was first, Woking or Brackley away. He likes that. Lots of others came in. Evening from Karen Knight and from Chef Dave TikTok. That's a new one. I wonder if that's the personal chef who's a big Notts fan, who my son follows on TikTok. Let me know if it is. Goes around people's houses cooking a nice dinner for them, Stell. So there you go.
Oh.
Might be a treat for the good lady. There you go. Cordon bleu, Chef Dave TikTok. Okay, he's a big Notts fan. If I've got one and the same, it might be someone completely different. But anyway, let's not count our chickens. Match Horizon. Both should be fairly easy wins. God dear me, that's a kiss of death. A.D. Clark, evening all. Richard Montigue is back, Stell back, and a winnable first round draw. Happy days. Evening from Chris Whitaker, Robert Holland. Looking forward to having a football match to talk about this weekend. Adam Kent, two opposite views on the FA Cup draw. I, for one, would like to get to round 3 and a massive club away. We should have had Everton away last year, Adam, shouldn't we? We should have had Everton away. Last game in the FA Cup. Never mind. Richard Elvian, good evening to you. Third round is a must, says Bud Chatwin, and hopefully a big club. Good chance to make it through to round 2. It was Alfreton last year, wasn't it? We got at home, if I remember right. Played it on a Friday night. So we can't complain too much, I don't think, about draws. Evening from Rosemary Mans. Dale Pikett. Jacob played against Cuba. That's right, it was the second game, wasn't it? Evening from Nick N and from Kay. Charlie Kate, well, the replay's tomorrow, so we'll know tomorrow evening who it will be. Neither's a gimme, in my opinion, says Chris Gosling. Both potential banana skins. Jurgen's obviously a BBC fan, not an ITV fan. He doesn't like the fact that some adverts have appeared when he was logging in to the show tonight. Apologies, I'm not quite sure what goes on with some of the gremlins. Evening, everyone, from Duncan Comrie. He is in Pefkos in Rhodes. I'm sure it's pretty warm there as well. Paul Cuthbert, good to see Richard Montigue back. Team playing well. Good chance to impress in the cup. Hopefully no injuries from internationals. And things looking good at Meadow Lane. Barnet, here we come. Welcome back to Richard M, says Rosemary Mans. Evening from Shane Walker, a.k.a. Solent Magpie. Evening from Lippy Jane, Mark Williams. Missed having the game Saturday, says Mark. Back on the horse this weekend and 3 points versus Barnet required. Lippy Jane, Stell, your holidays and international breaks are becoming a thing. Richard Terry, roll on Saturday. No decent football on the TV apart from boring, meaningless internationals. Agrees Rosemary Mans on the competitiveness of internationals. Me, I'm always just grateful England win and get to the finals. I mean, I remember as a young kid, Stowe, you probably vaguely remember it. We didn't used to get to World Cup. 74 didn't qualify, 78 didn't qualify, and you're watching the World Cup cheering on Scotland or something. Rosemary Moore. A friend went to Eastwood. Normally get about 172 people. Last Saturday, over 400 and a great win. Well done, Eastwood. Yeah, I believe they're having a bit of a renaissance and climbing back up the divisions after they went bust, or the previous incarnation of Eastwood. Chris Gosling. Brackley is closer to me than a Notts home game. Hopefully RM, that's Richard Montigue, says Reedy G Gaming, brings a new goalie with him. Well, not before January at the earliest. Lippy Jane, luckily we were celebrating a birthday, or else we would have not known what to do. We may have had to go to the beer festival numerous dames. Note wrong with Strictly. Yeah, my lad went. There's a big beer festival, wasn't there, at the cricket ground? My lad went along down there. Enjoyed the Eastwood game, says David Amy. So, because they used to, I don't know whether they still do. Didn't they used to play in black and white stripes, Eastwood? I don't know whether they've changed now. Donny Pie, listening on the radio as I do is nerve-wracking. I'm walking the house, jumping, shouting, odd, strange looks from the wife. Stell and the team do a great job. Greta Maxwell, if my maths are correct, win our game in hand and remain unbeaten in the next few, and we're in the playoffs. Right, there's tons more. Obviously, you've been itching to get some messages, but before Stell, we lose Stell or whatever happens. Stell, let's talk Richard Montigue, Director of Football. Slightly expanded role after the departure of Roberto Gagliardi after 4 months. Richard went down to Swansea. Surprise move, certainly to me. I didn't think he was. What do we make of one, if you like, filling the position again? Two, going with previous incumbent, who obviously both sides know how each other work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd echo what a few people have put in the comments there. I think it can only be good news. I think it's to get somebody back in who knows the club, knows the owners, knows obviously football radar, but he's gone away and had experience at a higher level. Obviously, he's also had experience outside of that football radar bubble, if you like, of doing things differently. Now, he might not have been there a great deal of time. It might not have gone exactly as planned, or as he might have hoped it had gone. But I think for him to come back to Notts, he'll come back with maybe, as anybody, more experience of doing things differently, and you'll take whatever positives he maybe saw. As you do from every experience in life, every different experience, you take the positives and sort of leave behind things that you don't think work. So for him to come back to Notts, it's to go back to a well-worn phrase that you like to say, it's an oven-ready solution, an oven-ready position, isn't it? Richard Montague, he knows what the brothers want. He knows what's to be expected. He won't have had a say in recruitment over the last sort of 6 months or so. So he might, have a differing opinion. He certainly will have a different opinion on some of the players that are here now. He obviously knows a lot of them, but he will have a different opinion on what's needed and what will be needed in January, perhaps. So I think it can only be good. It can only be a good thing, rather than having another new person come in from outside with a different view and a different way of working. So I think in terms of that position, that director of football and recruitment role, I think he's absolutely the number one candidate, and like to see him back, and I think it can only be a good thing for Notts.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Richard on this show, spoke very well. He would appear, from my interactions with him, to probably be, shall we say, kind of a bit more personable than Roberto. And clearly, it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. And, we talk about alignment. That was the buzzword, wasn't it? It's going to be interesting now, I think, that relationship. Clearly, we know Richard has a strong relationship with the brothers. He's worked for them for years. He's left. Clearly, the brothers haven't held that against him because they brought him back. And I guess in that kind of whatever you want to call it, have we still got a technical board? I don't know. Half of them left, didn't they, within months? Because obviously Dr. David Rhodes left for personal reasons about a month after he arrived, 6 weeks after he arrived. So that dynamic with Martin, I think, is going to be very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. You want everybody, aligned, but you want everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, don't you? You want them to agree. I think the fact that you say about they didn't hold that he went to Swansea away against him shows absolutely they couldn't, could they? With a data-driven model, it's about making decisions that take emotion out of it. So there would have been no emotion if Richard Montague they see as the best man for the job. Then absolutely it's the right decision. So you take emotion out of them sort of decisions, and like I say, I think it's hopefully going to reap rewards for Notts in the coming months and years. So and maybe he owes Notts a little bit as well to get just back in the good books because he did think the grass was greener somewhere else. But he went up 2 divisions, so we've seen it happen to managers, and I think it says how well he's probably thought of in terms of that he was recruited, headhunted, if you like, to go up 2 divisions as well. So yeah, I think the fact that he's back at Notts is only a good thing. Um, he knows how the like I say, the Reeds brothers want to work. They know how things work, and yeah, just developing the personal relationship between himself and Martin to get some sort of agreement on the sort of players that they're looking at. Identifying what we're maybe lacking, identifying where we're strong. That is the crux of recruitment. It's plugging your gaps and strengthening where you are strong when you can. So hopefully he comes in, develops that relationship. I'm sure he will. As you mentioned, he is quite a personable guy. Richard Montague spoke to him a few times, obviously, before he went to Swansea. And I think he's a good guy, and I think he's certainly good at his job. So here's to some future successes in terms of recruitment and other aspects of his role.
It, looking at this whole director of football role, Stel, and I'm borderline with it, if I'm being brutally honest with you, certainly at this level. However, it is clearly a burgeoning part of the whole data metrics recruitment drive. I am starting to notice now directors of football do seem to appear to becoming more accountable. We look at, is it Ross Mitchell at Forest, who was at Rangers, Forest, about to go up to Newcastle, average tenure about a year. And sometimes directors of football where it hasn't gone well, or the manager thinks they've done the work, gets rid of the director of football. I do detect as this position becomes more and more popular, if you like, I think there's starting now to be more accountability for results, because there is a long period of time when the director of football, more or less, if it went well, they'd take the reflective credit. They signed all the right players, and if it went wrong, it was down to the head coach or the manager because he wasn't getting the best out of the players.
Yeah, look, that's always happened in life, and it's particularly in sport, isn't it? When I'm a striker, when I'm scoring goals, yeah, I'm playing brilliantly, and when I'm not scoring goals, it's the service is rubbish. So, everybody can deflect, and turn any story into what they want it to be, can't they? But I agree. I think the one thing we spoke about, and again, I'm not so bothered about the setup, the structure of the club, because I don't think, other than in name and all that sort of thing, I don't think too much changes. The manager or the head coach picks the team, is responsible for how the team play. He will then answer questions and will be responsible to the owners ultimately, obviously, but then the CEO, and he'll be overseeing whoever heads up the recruitment department, no matter what their title is. You know, I think you're absolutely right, and what we spoke about, and I think everybody says it's about accountability. It's knowing your role and responsibility, and knowing that, hey, the book's got to stop with somebody, and here's your parameters. And Martin spoke about it, didn't he? I think there might have been words behind a few weeks ago, wasn't he? He spoke about staying in his lane,
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And I sort of get the impression that is, look, we've got clear boundaries, if you like, of what's your responsibility, what you are overseeing, what you are head of or manager of, or whatever you are. You're the coaching and the playing side and the substitutions and the training, all that sort of thing. The recruitment, that is a different role, and yes, you can maybe comment on it, but it's not ideal for the organisation if we have conflicting views coming out. So that's the stay in your lane bit. You do your job, you know and if this bit's to be criticised, the recruit, whatever, then we'll do the criticising to the person responsible for it, and clear roles and responsibilities. Say it's no different to a team. You know, your strikers need to know what their roles and responsibilities are. Your wingers, your defenders, your goalkeeper, all that sort of thing. And I think when they're clearly, I'm not saying aligned, but clearly marked, and everybody knows what they're going to be accountable for, then I think that's it. You can concentrate on dealing with your corner of the earth. You know what I mean? Dealing with your patch. And I think that's like I say, the structure, whether you have a technical board officially, or whether you just have a director of football, a head coach, coaches underneath that, a CEO, and then owners, whatever the structure, whatever the setup of the company, they'll all still be speaking. They'll all still be having the same conversations. They'll all be having the same discussions, arguments, friendly drinks, and pats on the back when things are going well. No matter what the title of the structure is. So I'm less concerned about that this technical, but I'm less concerned about that I was at the start. It's no real different. It's just maybe putting tags on things and hopefully clearly marking somebody's territory. And again, that comes down to accountability, which I think can be a good thing. And whether Roberto Gagliardi has paid the price of that clear accountability, we maybe will never know. But now Richard Montague's in situ, and I'm sure he will know clearly what is expected of him and what his roles and responsibilities are. And like I say, he has to step across the line and develop that relationship with Martin as a coach and a director of football, or a head coach and a director of football. But they're also not treading on each other's toes because they'll clearly know where the buck stops with each of them.
Now, since you've now become a semi-international globe-trotter, Morocco, North Africa, you're off to Dublin. I'm not sure whether we've actually had a chance to speak with you since the Fans Forum. I don't think we have.
No.
And one of the interesting points I think that came out from the owners, fair play, they did it, wasn't probably the greatest time to be doing it with some of the things that had happened. Fair play, they fronted it up. I think it was Christopher Reitz who said this is the biggest footballing budget they've allocated to the club since we arrived, which I guess came as a surprise, certainly to me, to quite a few others. David McGoldrick was released. Presumably he was one of the higher earners. Alex Bass was sold. Again, presumably he was one of the upper echelon earners as an experienced goalkeeper coming in with a good pedigree from Sunderland. Does that surprise you at all? I mean, and clearly people then start to say, well, have we had value for money? Was this, one of the challenges that when we talk about responsibility and accountability with Roberto? You surprised by that comment? You surprised this is a record footballing budget?
Possibly, yeah, but I think just the nature of inflation of everything, players' salaries go up year on year, and everything creeps up because of inflation. For David McGoldrick going, you say a couple of the higher earners have probably gone, but then, like I say, they've recruited 11 players, and they're not going to come in on peanuts because they're going to, pay the wages, pay the money, the going rate for them. Now, you're absolutely right, and that is part of the recruitment conundrum, isn't it? It's value for money. You can judge recruitment. Have you got value for money for the players? Now, we are never privy to the amount of contract. That yes, they took transfer salaries, transfer fees in for some of the players that have gone. Obviously, since Macaulay Langstaff, Alex Bass, Dan Crowley, Aaron the Man. But also that money has gone elsewhere. I'm thinking about the pitch, the nest. In the business model to try and get it this sustainable club. So maybe in a football team, in a football club, they're not duty bound to have a football budget. Any money that is brought in for players automatically goes back on players. It's put into the club as a business to try and achieve this sustainable project. But also, if they're now saying it's the biggest footballing budget, then they're not skimping on that area either. Again, the debate comes down as how well has the money been spent in terms of salary, because I don't think we've paid too much in terms of transfer fees to bring players in, but it's obviously the salary and the wages that the players are on behind that. So, and I do still think we've got quite a large squad, in terms of numbers. So that sort of maybe artificially inflates the playing budget a little bit. So look, I will never really criticise anybody for it. You know, with no reason to disbelieve. I think the owners have been brilliant since they came to the club. They're trying to do the best for the club. And you know they've overseen a bit of success. Hopefully they'll oversee some more. But I think you can see long-term planning in some of the decisions that they're making. Of course, we all want them to spend more money, but it's easy when it's not our money, isn't it? It's easy to spend other people's money. You know, we're all great at that, and we all want better players, and we all want this, and we all want that. But they are actually funding the club. They are actually funding it to the tune of however many million of
Yeah.
pounds each year, you know, it is costing them. So look, if it's the biggest playing budget that we've had, then great, and hopefully that continues. That, like I say, they are wanting us to be promoted. They are wanting success for the club, for the fans, for themselves, of course, but to get the club in this sustainable and way of running itself. Now, the quicker they can get there, absolutely the better. But we want to see some good football, obviously, because football clubs are always about short-termism in terms of what the fans want. We want success and we want it now. So I think they've done brilliantly. I will not criticise them for, people might say, well, we need X, Y, and Z players. But like I say, we're not having to fund it. Yes, people say we buy tickets and we pay sponsorship and we all that sort of things. Fair enough. But we're not the ones who are footing the bill to the tune of whatever the overspend, if you like, of the club is. So I think they're showing enough sort of promise. They're showing enough intent, to go and get promotion. I know people have questioned that, but I think sometimes recruitment is not a definite, science, and it goes against all the data and all the football radar stuff. Maybe a little bit, but it is not an exact science. You can only do so much. You can do everything you can in terms of preparing, trying to pay the right amount for a player, identifying the right players. But sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work for reasons beyond data and things like that. So it is difficult, but if they're putting the money there, then again, you're down to putting the trust in whoever's being entrusted to spend that money, to write the contracts, to agree the contracts for the right players. And again, we'll only ever find out come May as to whether the recruitment has worked this season and that budget is enough or not.
Let's get some thoughts from the flock. Chef Dave TikTok, he is the personal Notts County supporting chef. Colin Metcalf, we've shown improvement recently, which gives me renewed hope. I'm now looking for some consistency, which is key to a successful season for me. Essie Kent, do we know if Lois made it to the lane? Lois Lane, Lois Bruff, in her 90s. Lois, one of our ardent, most vintage supporters. She's had a fall and she was hoping, I think, to get back to the lane pretty soon, if not the game against Oldham. Martin Blaney, sometimes I struggle to understand the brothers thinking about sustainability with only limiting away fans to 2,000 when you really want to see a nearly full capacity. Derek Flowers, so we have a personal chef and a floor layer, aka Grezza. Any more tradesmen amongst the Magpie Circle flock? Stephen Newton, yes, Lois did make it down for Oldham, so trust that she enjoyed that. I'm glad to have Richard Montigue back, says Nathan. James Moore, evening all. An Alfred and repeat would do for me. Come on, you magpies. I certainly missed my Notts fix this weekend gone. Chef Dave TikTok. If Stell fancies a free private dining, they are. You have to declare this, right, Stell?
Of course, yeah, benefit in
On the
kind, yeah.
Magpie Circle register of interests, okay?
That's it, yeah.
That's a very kind offer, Chef Dave. Derek Flowers. Paul, your arms are longer than your body. Look, I've got Popeye arms, haven't I? The angle, I'm on some different
You
machine,
wish.
so I've got the Popeye arms. Look at them biceps, triceps. Look at them. Yeah, I do wish.
I thought
Stell,
there
you're
were a
not
couple of
wrong.
threads coming out your shirt.
Get out, hey! I've got to go in for a bloody replacement hip in 2 weeks. Tell you. What else have we got? Sorry to digress. Martin H, question for Stell. What's his most memorable favourite FA Cup moment in his playing career? We'll come to that when I've just read a few more. I will have forgotten by the time I've read some of these. So, Stell, when I come back to you, just answer that first. Kirisut, glad to have Richard back at the club. Jurgen Halligan, if it's Brackley, their ground only holds 4,046. So I hope it's Woking. Away tickets will be hard to get. Jurgen, hey, on that, was it Royal Enfield you've got that you park outside the Meta Club? You'll get one. You're one of the loyal ones. What we the 10 plus merchants from last year. You'll be all right. Don't they have to give a higher percentage? I think in the FA Cup. Is it 25%? Not 100% sure. Nick, Paul, where are you staying in Carbis Bay? My wife loves Carbis Bay, and I'd love to take her to stay over. Years ago, we used to stay in the remember the G7 when Boris got all the prime ministers and Biden down here. There's the Carbis Bay Hotel. That used to be about 150 quid, which I could afford. Since they've had Joe Biden, Macron, and Boris, it's now about 700 a night. So I'm not staying there anymore. So we're just up the hill from that. Lots of these not Airbnbs, but these Cornish holiday places. Very nice place overlooking the sea. So it's a really nice place. Send me a separate message and I'll tell you where I stayed. Does any does anyone know more about Richard Montigue departure? I'm not sure whether he means Roberto Gagliardi or whether about his departure from Swansea. I think they had someone else take over some of his duties at Swansea, so they didn't directly replace him, if memory serves, James. Colin Metcalf, I've had a look at Brackley's ground on Google. Crikey me, come on, Woking. I think they've had problems. I don't think if they ever won the National League, they could come into the Football League. I think it's failed ground criteria before. I don't think it's great. What else have we got? Ian Cooksey. If Notts played Brackley, they will become one of only a few league teams to play at 3. I love this one. I don't know whether it's right or not, but how on earth do you bloody find this out, Cooksey? If Notts played Brackley, they will become one of only a few league teams to play at 3 different grounds called St James's Park. You're welcome to the useless stat of the night. That would be Exeter and Newcastle United. I didn't realise Brackley was called St James's Park. Rosemary Mans. I'm sure Richard left in good heart with the brothers, and they've been very happy to welcome him back. Sure, he'll be fine with Martin Patterson. Adam Kent, Langstaff coming back in January? ? Rosemary Mans doubts it, but why not, Rosemary? We've taken a director of football from a championship club. Why shouldn't we be getting some players from championship clubs? Andy Eason, Cape Verde have just qualified for their first ever World Cup. Have they really, Andy? I tell you what, Stell, there will be all sorts of players with Cape Verdean, if that's the correct phrase, grand parentage, who suddenly declare themselves available to play for Cape Verde now. You can just see it coming, can't you? There'll be about a dozen players in the Premier League, right, with Cape Verde grandparents, never been to the island. The mum and dad won't have ever been, but we're now eligible for the World Cup. What else have we got? Andy Eason, be interested to see what extent Richard's role has been expanded to. I believe it kind of mirrors a bit like the Roberto Gagliardi role. If I remember right, when we had Richard on the show 12 or 18 months ago, he said he was kind of a de facto of director of football, but it wasn't that, if I remember right, it wasn't his actual title. So I guess now he's got a full umbrella role as a director of football. Gareth Rawson, here we go. There's another great one. My father-in-law played for Brackley in the 70s and was a bit of a club legend. Been dreading this draw for years. Well, there you go. That's an interesting one. Greza's active on the socials at the minute. By the way, Greza, my collar on the Boss shirt here is immaculately ironed, right? I did tell my missus about your comment about poor ironing. Greza said that my wife wasn't ironing my collars properly. Now, what Greza don't know is he's got his table for 10 at the Raddy night. Now, if Mrs. Mace comes along, I think you'll be all right. I don't think she will. If Mrs. Mace comes along, I'm going to point her out, Greza, okay? And you will be in trouble. I can tell you that now. And no amount of free floors will cut it. You can try, but it won't cut it. I promise you. Chris Gosling. I'll break off from there because I've almost caught up. Still, I've given you enough time to remember some FA Cup games and probably forgotten them again. FA
I was
Cup.
going to say, yeah, I was hoping you'd forget about it. You know what I'm like for remembering my career. One thing that sticks out to me, I mean, it was my first FA Cup involvement, and I was 17 at Derby, and we talked about. It was one of the few times I ever came in at round 3, so it was just into the new year, first weekend in the new year. I wasn't expecting to play necessarily. 17 years old, got picked to play against Burnley up at Turf Moor. And the game started brilliant. I put a cross in after about 2 minutes, and Martin Chalk came in the back post, headed it in. We were 1-0 up. So a real good introduction as a teenager to the FA Cup and the atmosphere of it. We ended up drawing 1-1 and getting back to a replay. But I always remember that, just my first involvement in the FA Cup. Didn't score, didn't have a great game or anything, but just first involvement. It was like a dream come true to play in the third round of the FA Cup. I mean, we had 1 or 2 memories with not some good, some not so good. Obviously, losing at Southport and getting substituted after about half an hour because Darren Caskey got sent off in the opening half hour. Oh God, yeah, that was one of my not so happy days. I mean, yeah, he got sent off. I think we were winning 1-0. I think Danny Allsop had scored, and then after about half an hour, he gets sent off. So Billy Dearden brings me off.
You were the
You know, obviously,
sacrificial magpie.
I'd like to think so. Obviously, I'd done crap in the first 30 minutes, and Danny had scored. I was not happy, and I obviously was less happy at the end of the game when we went on to lose 4-2. I think it was on the day. So, and I think the fans gave us a bit of a dressing down, rightly so, as we were getting on the coach and at the ground. So that's a less happy memory. I think we had a decent. I say decent cut run. I think we only got to the third round when we played Wimbledon, didn't we? But we seemed to play about 15 games to get there, replays and what have you. And I think we beat Ipswich along the way, possibly in the second round. That was a good night at Meadow Lane, and that was the infamous Wimbledon game that was fogged off just after half time, wasn't it?
Neil Ardley was playing. Neil Ardley, I think
yeah.
he was. I didn't
Well,
see him. But he said he was on the pitch to me.
Yeah. Nobody saw him in that second leg. He scored a worldie down at Sellers Park. Scored an absolute worldie, and by contrast, I scored a tap-in. So yeah, some different FA Cup memories, but I think I've not had a great FA Cup run, as you can probably tell from me waffling on about them nothing stories. But yeah, I think my first involvement in it to play as a 17-year-old at Turf Moor for Derby was pretty special.
Very good. Chris Gosling, we're reaching a real critical point of the season. Our fixtures up to the new year look pretty challenging. Could really be a season shaping couple of months. And I want to come back to that point about results haven't always been what they needed to be in previous years against the teams at the top end of the table. And certainly so far this season, we've been pretty effective flat track bullies, beaten 5 of the bottom 7 or whatever it is. Let's just pick up some more. Greza, more from him. Paul Cuthbert. Interesting that Crowley is only managing to get on the bench at MK Dons at the moment. Clearly, he's not necessarily pulling up too many trees. What I would say, Paul, is that I know 1 or 2 people were kind of dancing a bit when MK Dons weren't getting results. They've picked 1 or 2 very good results up recently, haven't they? And I do think they are pretty much shoo-ins, with or without Dan Crowley playing regularly, for one of those top 3 spots spaces this season, which makes it a little bit harder for the likes of us. Rosemary Mans. Players, it's like breeding cattle. Not sure Stowe will like that analogy. Sometimes you get a prize winner, sometimes you don't. Bracket, it's the farmer's daughter in me, she says, does Rosemary.
I don't want to know which one of them I am, by the way. We don't need any comments on that. Let's just leave that where it is. Let's put it out to pasture.
But Stell, that little visit to Morocco sharpened the mind for you, hasn't it? You're like a razor tonight.
Well, it's only like sharpening plasticine, isn't it? Yeah.
Shane Walker, keep the faith. Come May, we will be up there fighting for the top 3. Yes, Shane Walker, I believe for one, says Essie Kent. I'm getting slaughtered for my dress sense. I'm not sure if Paul's dressed as Finding Nemo or a pumpkin for Halloween. James Moore, right, you're going on the red card list. You better get, for that, you need to buy 4 tickets for Raddy whilst I'm blocking you. Okay. Stephen Newton, I was there at Southport. If you were there. I don't think I was. I think I was doing my time at Leicester, so I didn't get so many games. But yeah, it sounds a pretty horrendous trip. Greta Maxwell, immaculate collars there, Paul. Tell Mrs. Mace I'll buy her a large G&T if she pops in. Andy Easom, Southport. That one again, it was so grim. On Match of the Day too. Did Stowe make the cuts for that, Andy? Did he make the highlights being brought off? Looking very disgruntled.
That is one word for it. I was definitely disgruntled that day.
Ian Cooksey, we were 2 up at Southport, but were awful in the second. Well, we were 2 up because Stowe was on the pitch, wasn't it? Obviously, it all went downhill after the 35th minute, but ultimately got what we deserved. James Moore, after a sceptical start, I'm starting to believe we can pull off a late top 3 charge or a solid playoff push. We're definitely gaining momentum. Wasn't meant at you, Stowe, says a retreating Rosemary Mans. Just in general, honestly. Hang on, I'm trying to hit the wrong buttons here. That could cause some problems. Where's the dartboard, Stowe? No idea. Right, I think I've caught up with everyone. Stell, I can't believe we're still here at the minute with this bloody Wi-Fi and everything, I tell you. Okay, serious point then. So Barnet coming up, and I did think when I saw Barnet's, he must be a manager. I don't think he'd like to be called head coach. I think I saw them early on in the season in some cup game on Sky. They got the big 6'6", maybe even 6'7" centre forward. He's kind of, for me, he's a bit like a poor man's Steve Evans. You know, he's motivational, shall we say? Doesn't suffer fools. I get the impression, and clearly they've done, together with the other promoted teams, pretty well. I mean, I think they're above us, aren't they? So you've got Barnet who are decent, you know, because as we know, it's not too easy making that step up. We've then got Swindon on Tuesday. I think, reading between the tea leaves, Swindon weren't very happy that the game got called off on that Saturday with our internationals, and clearly have pushed the Football League to get the game rearranged as quickly as possible. Hence why we've got them next Tuesday. Most of our wins, most of our collected points have come against teams in the bottom half. Defeats have come against teams above us. For me, this is the start of it, like as one of the flock mentioned. Interesting set of results, fixtures coming up. We're going to be playing the better teams. We haven't done well overall against teams above us in the table and around us when we've challenged for a little while now. Do you see encouraging signs, Stell, in the way we're getting momentum, the way we're now playing, that you think may give us a better chance of getting better results against the better teams?
Yeah, certainly. You would say that the momentum's picking up, that performances in general seem to have improved. Now, that's certainly the case at home, but I think this next week is a real test. Barnet are currently seventh. Again, still early days in the table, really, but they're seventh. They're on a decent run. I think they're unbeaten in five. I think they've won four of them. Um, and I do like Dean Brennan, the manager. I do like
Yes.
him.
Yeah.
Plain speaking, got a little bit about him as well. Liked him in
Yeah.
non-league. I thought whenever I saw him interviewed, I thought he said the right things. But I like
Yes.
how his team play. Always got energy. Always seemed to be trying to play the right way. And now is it Unlove, the lad at the centre forward, into the big lad we came across in non-league,
Yeah.
Leon Love, I
Six foot
think, is
seven,
this.
according to
Yeah,
Andy
big.
Adcock. Yeah.
He's a big physical presence, that is for certain. So it'll be a test. Every game's a test, but if one game at a time and all the usual cliches, absolutely right. But if you look, we can look at this week as a whole. Yeah, really difficult. Barnet in good form, going to their place at the weekend, and then following on from that, a trip down to Swindon on Tuesday night, who were in excellent form, second in the table. Scoring goals. They've got a character of a manager, haven't they, in Ian Holloway?
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a chance to get the sort of a bit of that monkey off your back. That comment that we've sort of has been levelled at Notts for 2 or 3 years now, where we don't tend to beat the teams above us. There's only one way to stop that being said, and that is actually beating teams above us. So they've got a chance to do that, albeit both games being away from home. Obviously, Notts' home record far better than the away record so far this season. So it's going to be a really, really difficult test, but. Notts go into it with a bit of form themselves and a bit of belief and a bit of momentum you feel that's gathering. Now, can they take that home form on the road and go and pick up points away from home? We shall see.
Yeah, so we're getting a bit of background on the Barnet striker. And Andy Adcock adds that I played against Mick Waite before he joined Notts. Yeah, Mick used to play Keyworth Saturdays, not, and I played against him when he was playing. I think it was Friar Tuck Villa, who were probably one of the teams in the not Sunday morning Prem. Yeah, and you have to say a great spot by Jimmy Sewell, Mick himself, when we did a show with him. You didn't necessarily have him down, despite the stature of being able to play professional football when at 23, 24, he's playing against the likes of me on a Sunday morning. But fair play, put the work, put the effort in, and had a good career, both playing wise and managerially. Andy Easom, no surprise, Ian Holloway was grumbling that the game was postponed at Swindon. Martin H, if we win promotion this season, will Stell give us Wonderwall on the guitar? It's a bit early for that, I think. It's a bit early. Paul Cuthbert, going back to the Southport game, I travelled there with Colin Slater, travelled up with him in the car, and she had some great conversations. Shame about the game. I do miss Mr. Slater, as indeed we all do. His dulcet tones will never be repeated. Another mention that Barnet keeper is suspended. We believe that is the case. Derek Flowers, if all the three players on international duties were injured at Notts, the game Swindon would have been played. What's the difference? Because they're on international duty. Look, it's just Ian. He will be using this, I am sure, for psychological advantage come that Tuesday night. Pythagorean. Mick Waite had a better goals per game ratio for Notts than Stell, I believe. Pythagorean's obviously
He's
got
not
his
the only
stats
one.
book out.
We ain't got time for him to name everybody who's got a better goal ratio than me.
Yeah. Greta Maxwell, I used to play for Nottingham West Indian Cavaliers. Cricket or football, Greta? Are still going today, called FC Cavaliers. Yeah, played against them and all. Andy Eason, roll on the drums, Paul. Third guest ex-player for the Raddy evening. So Trevor Christie, Paul Hooks, scorer of Notts County's second ever greatest goal, the one against Forest. And I'm just waiting on the cat in McCulloch to confirm he's coming down for the weekend. And there are some others to join us in the audience in the offing. Cyprus ref. Barnet, very physical, very good at the dark arts. Suggests the team play without shirts as they will not have them at the end of the game. It's done Wimbledon all right, hasn't it? It's done Wimbledon all right. Do we know who the ref's going to be, says Essican? I'm afraid we don't at the moment. Andy Adcock, who's clearly played against near as many players on a Sunday morning as I have. I played against Huxley when he was at Cotgrave. Indeed he was, Andy. Yeah, played for Cotgrave towards the end of his career. Some other members of his family. It was always, shall we say, a competitive game if Huxley was on the pitch, I have to say. Got sent off after... I think I'm right in saying his Football League debut was at home to Blackburn. He was 17. He came on in something like the 65th minute and went off again in the 80th minute, 15 minutes, and he was off. So there you go. But a quality player was Huxley. Finished his career at Derby, Stell. Were you around when
Yeah.
Huxley was at Derby?
Not as a player. I remember him signing. I remember him signing for Derby. Yeah, he's a name I remember from the past. Yes.
Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah, he'll be along. Ian Cooksey, Mick Waite, 32 in 88. That's in starts as opposed to the year 1988. Stell, 69 in 201 over 2 spells. But Stell does get in as one of the top 10 all-time record goal scorers for Notts County, Ian. Cotgrave, says Grezza, beat Nottingham West Indian Cavaliers in the Notts Cup final that I played in. I think Huxley finished at Boston, says Andy Adcock. The ref is M. Woods for Saturday, says James Knight. Anything you need, ask the flock. Okay. 11, 12 games gone now. Stell, new director of football, culture continuing to change, according to Martin Patterson. How much more room or how much more do Notts have to improve to kind of start to be thought about as, genuine playoff? And for me, at the moment, I think there is a gap to the top 3, certainly in terms of points per game that those teams have got. How far are Notts off at the moment? How much is momentum going to get us through? How important getting through to January and still being in that mix, so to speak?
Well, look, they're all massively important, aren't they? Momentum. So you've only got to go back to last season, haven't you, to see what momentum does for you. And you think about Walsall. We spoke about them before, where they were at the turn of the year. Was it? I don't know. It was the turn of the year, but they were 15 points clear at one stage, weren't they? And ended up not getting promoted. So, look, a football season, we go through it every year. Yet we all seem to have amnesia and forget how long a season is and how many ups and downs there can be. We are 3 points outside the playoffs at the minute with a game in hand over pretty much
Yes.
everybody above us, I think, apart from Swindon. So look, we're obviously a contender for them playoffs. Whether it's realistic or not, we'll find out over the next 30 odd games. But we're obviously building a little bit of momentum. As I mentioned before, we've got to take that home form, the wins and the way they're playing and the scoring the goals. We've got to take that into these 2 away games now. And if you want to start answering questions, this is the time to do it. You've got 2 difficult away games coming in front of you against teams that are above you in the table, albeit, say, we're not really, well, we're about a quarter of the way through the season, aren't we, really? You need to start taking points, picking up points to give yourselves that moniker of people taking you seriously. But it'd be a fool if people didn't take not seriously. Yes, you've got to stay in it to January, and then you sort of during this time they'll reassess. Again, we go back to the relationship between Martin Patterson and what's his name, Richard Montigue,
Yeah.
to see what they're identifying as what we need in January. And at this minute. They won't be able to firm anything up because we don't know where we are in January. We don't know what the budget will be in January. But you've certainly got to pick up as many points as you can between now and then, to build that momentum, to keep that momentum going, to keep in touch with, if there's going to be clubs above us, to keep in touch with them, and then maybe go again in January. But as we say, it's about 46 games. It's not about the first 11. They don't decide anything. They play a part. That's a quarter of the season. But you've got to keep going. It's the best team over 46 games, not over 11 or 12. So some teams have got out of the blocks quick, but just think of it like a distance race in the Olympics, where you see somebody go charging off. Turns out they're a pacemaker. They drop out with a lap to go, or 2 laps to go, or whatever it is. Walsall were that last season. They were almost like a pacemaker, gone off at an
Yeah.
unbelievable sprint, but couldn't keep it going. So it's the old adage. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But we're in the mix. We are in the mix. We are picking up. We've shown improvement, I think. And obviously, I didn't see the game Saturday, but I listened and
Yeah.
I've spoke to Adam and heard the reports and what have you. And they've shown that they've got a bit about them. They're improving. Are they the finished product? Are we the best team in this division based on what we've seen so far? No, of course we're not. But are we useless? Are we the worst? No, we're not. We're in there with a load of teams. It's a tight division. I can't see it being anything different again this season. And any team that could get some momentum, some positive momentum, can really make a break for it. And it's about how long you can keep that momentum to take you over the line in May. It's only where you are in May that matters. So, look, they're a contender, but I think this week is really big. I think Martin's been pleased, and he's been, almost praising the players, if you like, over the last couple of performances. He likes what he's seen, sees improvement, and he sees, us moving on, building a little bit of something. You don't want that derailing with 2 away games, 2 tough away games. Got to keep it going. Got to keep producing. It's the art of a footballer and a football team. To be a decent football team, you've got to produce more often than not. And like I say, the next 2 games will be a real test.
One final point, Stel, appreciating the art of goal scoring, finishers, or converters, as Martin Patterson likes to refer them. I think, there were an awful lot of comparisons just because he'd come from the same club. Tyrese Hall, always a better bet than George Abbott. Limited minutes in the opening games. Think certainly Martin was of a view, perhaps needed to get him up to speed with the physicality of League Two. And you missed 2 of them. But he's got 4 goals, all at home, by the way. And talking obviously about Tyrese. For me, it looks to be one of the most natural finishes in the box when the ball's at his feet. I mean, he finds the side netting each time, and his goals, which I'm sure you will have seen subsequently.
Yeah.
Good finishers, good finishers. Any midfielder, I don't know if you call him a tenor or a midfielder, whatever you want to call him, but, any midfielder that scores goals is worth their weight, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry. I mean, great finish at the weekend. Really composed, really nice placed finish. Just used the defender's body, shaped it round him with his right foot into the corner. Really composed, and again, possibly, and I hope this is the case over the term of the season. Possibly an example of a player who you need to get that first goal, you need to get that first performance, you need to get that first goal to then go on. And as we've seen, he's now up to 4 goals for the season, including the one in the cup. Um, and he needs to keep contributing that. With every goal will give him more confidence, more belief that he belongs at the level, because again, just like George Abbott, he's starting out his career. He's trying to take the first steps in competitive men's football, and we're not going to, or we shouldn't compare him to George Abbott because he's a
No.
totally different sort of player, but he's obviously going to get that because he's on loan from Spurs. And George Abbott doing well in Wickham in League One, isn't he? But Tyrese Hall, I think, in and out to start with, not really getting too much game time, but then gets a chance and takes it. Again, I'm boring. I keep repeating myself, but I keep saying it. You have an audition when you get a starting shirt, and you have a chance to show the manager and show everybody what you can do. And once you do that and feel like you really belong, then you can flourish. And then it's down to him to keep producing, keep performing. And I think the obvious, say the obvious, but a sort of comparison would be him and Conor Grant playing similar sort of positions. Conor Grant, lovely player, really tidy, but at this minute, Tyrese Hall is putting the ball in the back of the net. He's up to 4 for the season in what, a dozen or so games, and he's not played in
Yeah.
all of them. Conor Grant last season, I think he only got 5 for the whole season. And again, didn't play all the season. Of course he didn't, but that's the one bit he needs to add to the game. If you're going to play in them withdrawn positions, they're number 10 positions, you've got to influence goals, whether that's assists or goals. I know people don't like being judged on purely goals and things like that. But if you're going to play in them attacking positions, if you don't score goals, you've got to offer a hell of a lot to the team to be warranting a shirt in an attacking position to not contribute with goals and assists. So Tyrese Hall, he's banging form. Conor Grant can come in and do that. Absolutely, he can. I think he's a really decent player. But I think at this minute, Tyrese Hall is getting the mix right of, yeah, he's affecting games positively in terms of putting the ball in the back of net, showing composure, and looks like he's growing in confidence, in belief, in the fact that, yeah, I belong here and it's not going to phase me. And that's exactly what you do when you're starting out in your career. You don't doubt yourself. You always believe you can be good enough, but there's nothing to back up your belief until you start putting the ball in the back of the net or having really good performances that earn it, and you feel like you belong, and then you grow and become better and better. And if you can do that throughout the season, then we've got another strong loan signing.
Indeed, Wayne Wilkinson just chipping in on Tyrese debate. Tyrese has been class with his ability to find space in the pockets and then beat a man to boot. But for some smart defending to clear off the line, would have had a goal at Crewe also. Rosemary Mans concurs. Martin is looking after Tyrese. Adam Kent. Tyrese is doing great for my fantasy EFL team as a goal scoring midfielder. Just to wrap up on Strikers Union and all those, I think it's fair to say it's been a checkered start to the season for Alessandra, who's kind of, borne a heavy responsibility for goals for Notts. Got 20 in his first season, which I think he did remarkably well in. Well publicised shenanigans. Didn't get the permit to travel abroad. Missing 5 game suspensions at the start of this season. Agent comments. Signs a new contract. Yet bizarrely doesn't say a word about it, paraded by the club. Up he pops on Saturday, scores, sits at the end of the cop with his little celebration. After the game, jatter, jatter, jatter. Everything's forgotten about, Stell.
Well, it tends to be if you do the business on the pitch, doesn't it? If you score a goal and do whatever, and obviously I was listening on the radio, but I've seen the first goal that he was trying to claim, and I love
Yeah.
that. That is a proper striker trying to claim that first goal. If he actually gets awarded that first goal via the deflection, I want my career goals rerouting. I might be able to outdo Mick Waite with some deflections that I could claim, but no. But in all seriousness, I think you credit to him a little bit. It goes to show that you can, you know, whatever the truth is, whatever will happen about him looking at moving, his agent trying to, squirrel away looking for a move behind the scenes, that you can still focus on football and perform. And if you do that, and if you do it like Alessandro does and does it with it appears like a smile on his face, and he appears to enjoy it, and he doesn't rub people up the wrong way, he still will be popular. He's a popular Notts player. I think if we get him playing really well and getting him integrated into this team, then he's a real asset at League Two level. Of course, the fans will want to like him. I think that's the difference between a Jatta and the likes of a Dan Crowley, who managed to rub people up the wrong way despite playing well. I think Jatta can play well, and everybody wants him to do well because he's got that sort of persona about him. He's likable, and he's a good player. There's no two ways about it. He's a good player when he's firing and in form, and the team have got a way of integrating him and playing to his strengths, and he's maybe got to do a little bit more for the team at times. But it certainly looked like he did a little bit more running in channels at the weekend and then getting his goal as well. So that will build his confidence and his belief, and everything will grow. And it's back to that word momentum again. Things are going in the right direction. We're picking up momentum, and hopefully he can take that into Saturday at the Hive.
Who finishes top scorer this season, Stell?
That is a really good question. I mean, like I say, we haven't even mentioned him, Matty Dennis, have we? But leading scorer by a
Yeah,
considerable way has been sat on the bench, had to bide his time at the minute, and that's frustrating for him, I'm certain. But also, it's a good sign, isn't it? When you feel you can leave your leading scorer on the bench, we don't have to rush him back in. We can let him get right and go, well, you've got to earn it now. You've got to work your way back in. It's not an automatic, a given. It seems that Martin has gone back to going with just the spearhead single striker with two in behind him at the minute. Now, whether that changes for certain games, for certain teams, we'll wait and see. But if you're doing that, then potentially it's one of Jatta or Dennis. So at the minute, Jatta is the man in possession. Now, whether Matty Dennis comes in at some point in one of them withdrawn positions, we'll wait and see. But all I say that all to buy me time and not have to answer the question. But
I was just coming to.
I will give you an answer because look, it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. I'm generally wrong on these things. But if I was pushed, I will go Matty Dennis because he's got a lead at the minute. But look, that could
Yeah,
change come next week, next month, next year. But I hope they both push each other. I think it will be one of them two.
yeah.
Tyrese Hall, as good as he is, I don't know as if he's going to be up there for what we hope somebody's going to get into the 20s for the season, and we probably need that, if we're going to do anything. But yeah, I think it'll be one of them two. But at the minute, I've got to go Matty Dennis because I'm a law of averages man. I'm a stat man. He's got 6.
You'll be unsurprised to know, Stal, that when I debated this on a Sunday supplement after the last game, while you were sunning yourself in 35-degree heat in Morocco, I went for Jatta.
Right.
I just
Well,
think maybe over
yeah,
the course of a season. But look, it's a great problem to have. It's a great problem to have.
absolutely.
But anyway, look, we've run well past the hour now. I cannot believe the Wi-Fi in Carbis Bay has managed to last this long. So I'm going to make a hasty departure. Stout, thank you as always. Enjoy Dublin while the rest of us are off to Barnet.
I shall, yeah, pleasure. And obviously, I hope to be reporting from the county ground or Swindon's ground, whatever it's called now, after not so 3 points better off at the weekend.
All right. Thank you, everyone, one and all. Thank you to our official partners, JH Accountants, and the Big Shed at the Trent Navigation. We'll be back later in the week ahead of Barnet. Thank you to one and all for watching us tonight. Catch up with you all soon. And isn't it great to be getting a fix of football again this coming weekend? And we'll all be watching out Tuesday evening. Is it Brackley or Neil Ardley and Woking in round 2 of the FA Cup?
Cheers.